Hey, what's going on, family? It's your brother, Antoine Rivers, and you're turned into another episode of the Conviction Fiction, the podcast where the space, the place to be, the platform where we break down the real, the raw, and the redemptive parts of life after incarceration. Now, I'll be honest, I've been thinking a lot about what justice really means in this country, not the word we print on court walls or carve into marble, but the kind of justice that we live with every day. Because when you've been through the system, you realize something fast. Punishment and justice are not the same thing. One ends a case, the other heals a person. So in this episode, Echoes of Empathy, Restorative Justice and Innovations, it isn't just about a discussion or policy or reform. It's about people. It's about what happens when we stop defining each other by our worst moments and start seeing what's still possible. Right. So, without any further of ado, I want to say, um, I'm going to take you on a journey from broken systems to mended souls, from incarceration to restoration. We're going to talk about empathy, accountability, and the kind of justice that builds trust instead of tearing it down. Because when we talk about redemption on this show, we're not just talking about individuals, we're talking about whole communities, we're talking about generations and the human spirit's ability to rise. So let's go ahead and get into the conviction fiction. Here's the truth: America built a justice system that can punish like no other, but it still doesn't know how to forgive. Think about it. We've mastered incarceration, but forgotten rehabilitation. Our prisons are full, but our communities are empty. Empty of fathers, mothers, and mentors who could have been something more than a DOC number. The system loves finality. Case closed, like sentence served, time done. But the harm never ends when the gates open. You come home with a record, not a reputation. You serve your time, but you still can't rent, say, an apartment, or it's probably not affordable. You can't find a job or even coach your kid's team. And then society finds its way to shut its doors. So, what do most people do? Some they go back to what they know, not because they want to, but because the system left them no real way forward. That's not justice. That's recycling trauma. And yet we keep funding it. Billions every year poured into a system that delivers fear, not safety. Meanwhile, the communities hit hardest by crime are the same ones starving for opportunity, education, and hope. We can't talk about justice without talking about why people commit crimes in the first place. Maybe there's like poverty, trauma, lack of support, or untreated mental illness. Punishment doesn't fix those things. Punishment does not fix those things. Only healing would do that. Justice in its truest form should build trust between the system and the people. But right now, the trust is a little bit fractured. We have to stop asking how much time someone should serve and start asking how much change can someone create. Because real justice isn't measured by how long someone suffers, it's measured by how well they rebuild. And that's what the topic of this show is about today. Um, because I don't know, like maybe that's where restorative justice begins, not as a policy, but something of a promise that, hey, look, people can fall and still rise again. Is that uh, a promise that can't be fulfilled, that people can fall but still rise again? I don't think that's too far fetched of an idea. But it all comes to the root of restoration because before there were prisons, people, before parole boards, and before all that tough on crime rhetoric, there were people sitting in circles face to face saying, we have to fix this together. That's the heart of restorative justice, right? That's the heart of what the prison system was built on. I think it was more people trying to figure out a way to fix something. It's not about letting people off the hook. It's about putting them on the path. And when I first heard about restorative justice, I'll be real, I thought it sounded like another soft alternative, some buzzword. But the more I learned, the more I saw its power. It's rooted in ancient traditions, actually, like indigenous and African communities that believed in collective accountability. When harm happened, they didn't exile you. They brought you closer. They was like, something's wrong, let's figure it out. This they basically say you're one of us, and because of that, we have to fix this together. Now, that's a lesson that America never learned, or maybe they forgot it. Our modern system pushes people away, out of sight, out of mind. Send them up the road or down the road. But distance never heals anything. You can't repair what you refuse to face. And that's the problem that a lot of us have not come to realize, that you can't repair what you refuse to face. You can't repair yourself if you refuse to face the anxiety or the fears or the trauma that you may have had while you were younger or even in your formative years. You can't repair or become rehabilitated if you refuse to face those things that brought you to where you are. So restorative justice, they ask the hard questions like who was harmed, what do they need to heal, who is responsible for making it right. And that last question hits deep. Like, who is responsible for making it right? Because it forces everyone involved, even the offender, to step into empathy. It says that you cause some pain, but you still matter. You still have a role in making things right. Um, it's not easy work because there are some crimes. I mean, I don't like to talk about politics, and I talk about politics, but not necessarily politics. I talk about policy, right? Now, when it comes to policy, currently, certain crimes are automatically, depending on where you are, can carry the death penalty automatically, right? And I don't want to get into a policy debate about the death penalty. Um, not on today's show anyway, because it's not easy work. None of this stuff is. Restorative justice is not easy work. I mean, just facing the person you've harmed, hearing their pain, that's not weakness. That's courage. But when you lean into it, something should shift. And that's going off of the human nature aspect of just living, just being a human being. The wall between punishment and purpose will start to crumble once people are able to face what they fear. Restorative justice reminds us that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about transforming the past. It's about giving people the tools, the space, and the support to become more than their worst mistake. And that, family, is what second chances are truly made of. Now, real world restorative justice innovations are happening across this nation. Um, but first, let's talk about how empathy looks in motion. Let's talk about empathy, because restorative justice, happening right now here in the United States, is in schools, prisons, and courtrooms that decided to do things a little bit differently. For instance, in Wisconsin, a program called Healing Justice brings together victims and offenders for facilitated conversations. One victim, a young woman who survived a robbery, said after meeting her offender that for the first time, it felt like the pain had meaning. Like the man who robbed her said, for the first time, I felt like a man again. So that's restoration, when both people can learn something from an incident. Um, in Texas, juvenile programs use restorative circles to address fights, theft, and gang violence. Instead of suspension in the school or incarceration, they sit everyone down, the kids, the parent, the victim, sometimes even the whole block, and ask what happened and how do we fix it. They don't leave until there's a plan, and that plan is built on responsibility and not revenge. So, even in some of our prisons, there are pilots of restorative dialogues, lifers sitting across from victims' family, not to beg for forgiveness or sympathy or it was my bad, but to witness the weight of what they did. Some victims find peace, some don't. But every time, I guarantee you, every single time, someone walks away changed. Because empathy doesn't mean excusing harm, it means understanding it deeply enough to prevent it from happening again. And the numbers prove it. Programs grounded in restoration see lower reoffense rates, higher satisfaction from victims, and stronger community bonds. So I'm not just making this up. You can't legislate empathy, but you can build systems that make it possible. And when we do, we stop reproducing that pain and start producing purpose. That's the America I want to see. That's what this platform is about. You know, stopping the pain and producing purpose. One that doesn't just punish wrongdoing, but believes in the possibility of doing right again. Now, there's a ripple effect when it comes to this because healing individuals, mending communities, it kind of affects everyone. So when one person heals, they don't just change their own story, they rewrite the whole community's narrative. That's the ripple effect of restorative justice. For instance, I've seen men come home from prison and become mentors for the very kids they once influenced negatively. I've seen victims of crime lead circles that bring peace to others. I've seen neighborhoods that once called the cops for every dispute now host community circles where people talk, they listen, and they forget. Now, that doesn't give anyone the right to take advantage of a community that wants to heal itself, that wants to take care of itself. Um, Now, after that, I mean, you have to give second chances because that's what healing looks like when it's lived out loud. Um, restorative justice only works because it can reconnect us, if that makes sense. It only works when there's a reconnection. It says that you belong, and we believe that belonging is the soil where change grows. So, most people commit crimes because they don't figure they're not a part of anything. They're not, and when I say they're not a part of anything, I'm talking about economically. When it comes to community, when it comes to education, they don't belong. So they act out and start taking, or not conforming to society's norms, which we call laws. For the formerly incarcerated, that sense of belonging is life or death because when you've done time, you know how easy it is to feel like an outsider, to feel like your voice, your worth, your chance is gone. But restorative spaces remind us that redemption is a process and not a prize, right? We have to build through honesty, humility, and consistent action. And that's one of the themes that is prevalent in the new book that I wrote. Yeah. I'm always constantly working. I want to document this stuff because it may help someone else. But turning forward, it's in the editing phase, it's a process. But it's going to talk about that process of reentry. Not just some instant gratification, I'm out, I'm free, but working through the details, the minutiae. Is that how you say it? Minutiae of it all, right? Those little granular steps that you have to do. I'm not talking about getting a job and the typical housing issues that most reentry or returning citizens face, but that work behind getting a job that requires you to dig deep and understand that you might not get a job right off. When you want to give up, when you start feeling anxious or you start feeling depressed, okay, We're going to talk about the consistent action that is necessary in order to frame a successful reentry for everyone. If you're just overcoming, it's not just because of returning citizens, they need this, but if you ever suffered loss, right, or you ever felt disconnected, Turning Forward is the book for you. Look for that in the links coming in the weeks ahead. Um, so we talked about the offenders, about being honest and being humble, and working through consistent action. But for victims, these processes offer something the system rarely does. That's closure with compassion. Now, for communities, they offer hope that we don't have to live in fear of one another. America loves to talk about second chances, but restorative justice is how we build them. It's where accountability meets forgiveness and where people prove that trust can be rebuilt brick by brick. And that's what this podcast, this platform that I have, has always been about, that we have. It's a platform for us, showing that real change doesn't just happen after punishment. It happens when people start believing that they're worth rebuilding. Okay, so now we have to move into the future, right? We want a future that's safer, stronger, and more human. We've got to build on it. And that's using empathy, not empty words, but real empathy that leads to action, policy, and culture change. There are challenges, no doubt. Restorative justice can be misunderstood, misused, or underfunded. It requires trained facilitators, community buy in, and more importantly, it takes time. Things the system just isn't built for. But that's exactly why it's revolutionary. It doesn't fit into the old model, it replaces it with something far more deeper. And across America, we are seeing judges, educators, lawmakers begin to understand that punishment alone doesn't produce peace. In cities like Los Angeles, New York, and where I am here in Atlanta, local initiatives are using restorative circles to address youth violence and reentry challenges. I want to give a big shout out to Next Level Boards Academy um, here in Atlanta, spearheaded by Gary Davis, in the work that they're doing with Atlanta's youth. Faith-based groups are bridging divides between victims and offenders. Shout out to the Pod movement with the Both Sides of the Gun initiative that happens yearly, where they bring victims and offenders together to bridge that divide. The grassroots organizers, they're out there creating spaces for dialogue where courts once created barriers. And this is the future, people. A justice system rooted in empathy and not ego. One that actually finds redemption as a right, not a reward, but as a right. Everyone deserves to be redeemed. And it's weird sometimes because when you think about America, the primary, I guess, religion or spiritual leader of America is Christ, who preached redemption. Right? It's an idea that accountability is a form of love, tough love, but love nonetheless. Because here's the truth, guys: like empathy doesn't make justice weak; it makes it wise. So wherever you are, maybe you're fresh out, maybe you're still rebuilding, or maybe you're just trying to understand. Just remember this: second chances don't start with systems; they start with us. And empathy is only the bridge. So trust the foundation. That's what we're trying to build together. You got to trust the foundation of empathy. So, at any rate, I hope this one hit your spirit the way it hit mine, because when we talk about restorative justice, we're really talking about the power to heal what punishment never could. In today's conversation, if today's conversation moved you, share it. Let someone else hear what empathy sounds like when it's put into motion. If you're walking that reentry road, remember you're not defined by your past. You're refined by your process. Follow the Conviction Fiction podcast on all platforms and check out the books No Turning Back, the Conviction Fiction, Changing the Narrative, and coming soon, Turning Forward. that will be available on Amazon, which are basically tools for real growth, real redemption, and real second chances. Until next time, keep your faith strong, your circle solid, and your purpose louder than your pain. Peace, family. Till next week.